They needed to understand why they had come. Did they seek resources? Was this a quest for power? Could there be a peaceful resolution? The humans didn't know, and the aliens didn't seem interested in telling them. The world watched in horror as their most advanced communication technologies failed. Satellite links were severed, and the internet went dark. Governments attempted to get word out to civilians, but the aliens' relentless assault had crippled communication. Over the next few days, the invaders began their occupation. Massive ships hovered over the largest cities of Earth, while drones, which were far smaller and more agile, scouted and surveyed every inch of the land. The alien forces were not simply laying waste to the planet, they were establishing a foothold. And then came their message. The first recorded transmission from the aliens was loud and unintelligible, an eerie buzzing sound that pierced the airwaves, shaking even the most prepared listeners. No one could decipher it. Then, the aliens' leader made their first attempt at direct contact. Through a massive holographic projection beamed over the shattered remains of New York, a figure materialized. The alien appeared humanoid, but its features were unsettling, tall, with elongated limbs and pale skin that glistened in the sunlight. Its eyes were vast, black, and cold, like the void of space itself. "I am Ekron, the commander of the Arvik Dominion," the alien said in a voice that vibrated through the very bones of those who heard it. "Your species has been judged. Earth is ours now." It was clear in an instant, the alien forces did not view humanity as equals, but as insects, unworthy of mercy or negotiation. They had come to Earth with the sole purpose of conquering and enslaving the planet. They had traveled across the stars to claim this world, and humanity was nothing more than an obstacle in their way. Despite the overwhelming force the aliens had brought with them, a strange quiet spread across the world. People began to wonder, were the humans of Earth truly helpless in the face of this invasion? Could they defend their home, or were they doomed to become a footnote in the vast history of the universe? Across the globe, the leaders of humanity began to realize the same truth: the aliens did not want to talk. They did not care about humanity's plight. There would be no negotiations, no peace talks. The aliens intended to wipe out all resistance and impose their will on Earth. The first response from the human race came not from governments or military officials, but from ordinary civilians. Anger swelled in the hearts of those who watched their cities burn. Survivors of the initial attacks began to speak out, not with fear, but with resolve. If the aliens were going to conquer Earth, they would have to do it over the bodies of those who refused to surrender. Earth's children would fight back. Within hours, scattered pockets of resistance began to form. At first, it was small, isolated groups, people who had lost everything to the invaders. They were not soldiers, not trained fighters, but civilians with nothing left to lose. They armed themselves with whatever they could find, using alien technology where it was available, but mostly relying on old-fashioned tactics, guerrilla warfare, and sheer determination. In the wake of the initial shock, the humans' response would become clear: they would not go down without a fight. But for now, the world was still in chaos, reeling from the invasion. The alien ships remained in the sky, their presence an ominous and undeniable threat. In every city, people whispered the same words: "We're not going to let them win." Humanity had been dealt its first blow, but it had not been defeated. The battle for Earth had only just begun. In the aftermath of the initial shockwave caused by the alien invasion, a strange calm settled over the world. Major cities lay in ruins, and the global communication network was crippled, but the human spirit, resilient and defiant, began to stir. The world had been torn asunder, but within the ashes of civilization, the seeds of resistance began to take root. As the alien forces continued to assert their dominance, occupying strategic points across the planet, humanity's first instinct was survival. Initially, the fractured governments of Earth scrambled to protect what remained of their countries, but the reality soon became clear: Earth was no longer governed by borders. The enemy was not human, and the fight for survival would be global in scale. Nationality didn't matter anymore. Resistance movements began to form in secret, starting with small bands of survivors. In the bombed-out remains of Paris, a group of military veterans and civilians gathered in the ruins of the once proud city. They were not soldiers, but they shared one common trait: they had seen death and destruction up close, and they weren't about to let it be the end of their story. The first spark of rebellion was humble, a small, uncoordinated group of humans wielding whatever they could scrounge up. Some carried old military rifles, while others had makeshift weapons cobbled together from the remnants of destroyed infrastructure. But they shared a singular vision: they would fight back, no matter how impossible the task seemed. These early resistance movements were rough, fragmented, and untrained. But even in the chaos, some emerged as natural leaders. In the heart of Paris, a former French general named Marcellus Dubois rallied a small but passionate group of fighters. His history as a tactician in human conflicts had taught him one valuable lesson: never underestimate the power of the human will to survive. He quickly became the leader of a faction that would grow stronger with each passing day. In other parts of the world, similarly minded groups were forming. In London, a former scientist named Clara Thompson took charge of a group of engineers and technicians. They scoured the ruins of Earth's technology, scavenging alien tech and attempting to reverse engineer it. Meanwhile, in the heart of the United States, an ex-Special Forces operator named Marcus Reynolds worked tirelessly to unite disparate groups of civilians and military personnel to prepare for the coming war. The core idea driving the resistance was simple: survival would not be enough. The humans knew that their planet was under occupation, but they also knew that it didn't have to be forever. They could reclaim Earth. They had to. In each of these groups, a common thread began to emerge. They were no longer simply defending themselves, they were starting to organize, to strike back. The first significant success came when a team of engineers, including Clara Thompson, managed to capture an alien drone that had been patrolling the outskirts of London. They didn't know exactly how the drone worked, but they knew one thing for sure: it was a tool they could use. For the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. The captured drone was deactivated and brought back to the makeshift resistance headquarters in London. Clara and her team of engineers worked around the clock, studying it. It wasn't long before they discovered its power source and figured out how to override its security systems. They had just unlocked a crucial piece of alien technology, something the invaders had taken for granted but could now be used against them. It was an odd feeling to use the enemy's own technology against them. But necessity often breeds strange alliances. The humans, who had once been the technologically inferior species, were now gaining knowledge from the very invaders who had underestimated them. Clara's team reverse-engineered the drone and used it to launch small, targeted raids on alien outposts. These raids were more symbolic than strategic at first, but each successful strike sent a powerful message: humans would not be subjugated without a fight. In Paris, General Dubois gathered his forces and planned the first large-scale operation. Using the alien technology they had captured, the resistance had been able to communicate with scattered resistance cells across Europe. The time had come to coordinate a larger effort. The aliens had underestimated Earth's ability to organize, but this would be humanity's chance to show them otherwise. The resistance would not be fractured or disjointed any longer, they would strike as one. Dubois' plan was ambitious. They would infiltrate one of the alien strongholds in the region, located just outside the ruins of Berlin. Intelligence gathered by the resistance suggested that the aliens were storing critical resources, fuel, supplies, and perhaps even their most advanced weaponry, at this location. If the resistance could seize these supplies, it would provide a massive boost to their war effort. The operation was risky, and everyone knew it. But the urgency of the situation made hesitation impossible. This would be a turning point in the fight for Earth. If they failed, it would be a crushing blow. If they succeeded, it would be a clear signal to the aliens that humanity was far from beaten. Under the cover of darkness, Dubois' forces moved into position. The resistance had learned to use guerrilla tactics, blending in with the ruins, hiding in plain sight, and making use of every shadow and every crumbling wall to avoid detection. NS and cloaking systems that allowed them to move undetected through alien territory. With Clara's team providing technical support, the human fighters had managed to adapt alien technology to their advantage, jammer devices that disabled alien communications and cloaking systems that allowed them to move undetected through alien territory. When the attack began, it was swift and brutal. The Resistance, now armed with advanced alien tech, stormed the alien stronghold with everything they had. The first wave was led by Du Bois, who led his soldiers with a fierce determination. The aliens, who had assumed Earth's inhabitants were weak and disorganized, were caught off guard. The human fighters breached the alien defenses with an unexpected ferocity. The battle was intense, and casualties were high on both sides, but the humans held their ground. Using their newfound knowledge of alien technology, they were able to counter the invaders' weapons, turning the tide of battle in their favor. By the time the final blast echoed through the alien compound, the humans had secured the supplies they needed. The victory was hard-won, and it came at a heavy cost. Many lives were lost, and many more would be sacrificed in the days to come. But this success was the first true indication that the humans were capable of defeating the alien invaders. The Resistance had proven that humanity could not be easily conquered, that Earth was a planet not to be underestimated. In the aftermath of the battle, as the survivors regrouped and tended to their wounds, a quiet but powerful realization spread among them: the war had only just begun, but humanity had already taken its first major step in reclaiming Earth. The Resistance was born not out of necessity alone, but out of a defiant will to fight for the future, a future where humanity would no longer be passive or helpless. The human race had begun its counteroffensive, and the aliens were beginning to realize that their conquest of Earth would be far more difficult than they had ever imagined. The victory at the Berlin stronghold had sent shockwaves through the alien command structure. For the first time since their invasion, the invaders were forced to acknowledge that humanity was not as easily subdued as they had assumed. But the arrogance that had brought them to Earth remained their greatest flaw. The aliens, who had once viewed themselves as invincible conquerors, continued to underestimate the human capacity for innovation, defiance, and survival. As the alien forces regrouped and reassessed their strategies, the humans wasted no time capitalizing on their newfound momentum. The first significant change was in their approach to combat. No longer were they simply reacting to the alien threat. Now, they were proactively hunting down alien bases, striking at weak points in the invaders' military infrastructure, and launching precision operations aimed at disrupting their supply chains. Every victory, no matter how small, sent a clear message: humanity was learning how to fight back. In London, Clara Thompson's team had made another breakthrough. They had successfully reverse-engineered the alien drone that had been captured earlier, and now they were experimenting with ways to use it as a weapon. The technology, while still a mystery in many ways, was gradually becoming less of an enigma. The team had integrated the drone into a larger network of automated defenses and surveillance systems. Using its sophisticated cameras and sensors, they could now monitor alien movements in real time and intercept communication signals. This technological leap allowed the Resistance to gain vital intelligence about alien troop movements and logistical operations. At the same time, Marcellus Du Bois' forces in Europe began to expand their footprint. The success in Berlin had sparked similar rebellions across the continent. In cities like Madrid, Rome, and even as far east as Moscow, local resistance groups were rallying together to form a unified front. Du Bois coordinated these efforts, using guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and hit-and-run missions to keep the aliens off balance. The Resistance was no longer a series of isolated pockets; it had become an organized, highly effective military force. The alien commanders were puzzled. Initially, they had dismissed humanity as primitive and incapable of mounting any substantial resistance. But as the months passed, it became clear that the humans were evolving their tactics, learning from every encounter, and using alien technology against its creators. The aliens had expected Earth to be a quick conquest, a prize easily seized. They had underestimated the intelligence, adaptability, and sheer willpower of the human race. The first major mistake the aliens made was underestimating the human ability to strategize. Their command hierarchy, though efficient, was rigid. They had expected Earth's populations to break apart under the pressure of the invasion, leading to chaos and submission. But instead, humans displayed an almost uncanny ability to organize, adapt, and fight back. The aliens had not anticipated this level of resistance, and as they tried to suppress the growing human defiance, they realized too late that they were no longer the only ones with superior technology and military strategy. The arrogance of the aliens was most evident in their treatment of humanity's leadership. The alien commanders had expected Earth's governments to fall apart under the pressure. They had not planned for the emergence of unexpected leaders like Du Bois, Clara, and Marcus Reynolds. These individuals had come together not only as military leaders, but as symbols of humanity's resilience. They became the rallying point for millions of humans across the globe, leading from the front, making tough decisions, and inspiring their people with their unwavering commitment to victory. The aliens, on the other hand, continued to rely on brute force, their advanced technology, and their belief in their own superiority. They assumed that humanity would crumble in the face of such overwhelming power. However, the aliens had failed to account for the resourcefulness and determination of humans in the face of extinction. They had not considered that a species driven by the will to survive, to protect their families and their home, could evolve beyond what they were capable of understanding. This underestimation became even more apparent when Du Bois launched a high-risk operation deep behind enemy lines. Using the alien drone technology as a reconnaissance tool, Du Bois' forces located a hidden alien research facility in the Swiss Alps. This facility was believed to house some of the most advanced alien weaponry and possibly the key to their war efforts. The operation to infiltrate and destroy the facility was nothing short of daring. Du Bois' forces, knowing that they could not match the aliens' technological superiority directly, had developed a new strategy: use the terrain, the elements, and sheer audacity to their advantage. The Swiss Alps provided the perfect setting for this operation. The aliens had established their research facility in an isolated area, believing it to be impenetrable. What they failed to realize was that humanity had the advantage of terrain knowledge, guerrilla warfare tactics, and a deep connection to their environment. The resistance fighters, skilled in survival and knowledge of the land, moved swiftly and silently through the mountains, evading detection. The mission was a success, but it came at a heavy price. The resistance had lost many good fighters, but they had managed to destroy the research facility and its stockpile of advanced weaponry. The alien forces, blindsided by the audacity of the human assault, had not expected the humans to strike at such a well-guarded and seemingly insignificant target. This victory was another blow to the alien invaders' confidence. As the aliens continued to regroup, they began to question the efficacy of their tactics. Their leadership, while highly intelligent and technologically advanced, had failed to adapt to the rapidly changing situation on Earth. The humans were no longer just a nuisance, they had become a legitimate threat to the alien invaders' control over the planet. The resistance was no longer just a series of small, isolated groups, it was a well-coordinated force capable of striking deep into enemy territory, sabotaging alien infrastructure, and even stealing their most valuable technologies. The arrogance that had brought the aliens to Earth was now their greatest weakness. They had underestimated humanity, believing that their superior technology and overwhelming force would ensure victory. But as the humans continued to fight back with ingenuity, adaptability, and courage, the alien invaders began to realize that they were no longer the masters of this planet. They had awakened a force far stronger than they had ever anticipated, the indomitable will of the human race. The war had just begun, and the aliens, who had once thought of Earth as an easy conquest, were now facing an enemy they could no longer ignore. Humanity was learning, evolving, and adapting faster than the invaders could have imagined. The humans were no longer the prey, they were the hunters, and the aliens had underestimated them. The tide of war was shifting, and the aliens were beginning to understand that their conquest of Earth would not be as easy as they had once believed. Months had passed since the first victory at Berlin, and the war for Earth was no longer a battle of survival, but a struggle for the planet's future. What had begun as isolated pockets of resistance had now become a worldwide effort. From the ruins of the major cities to the remnants of military bases, humanity had managed to hold its ground, slowly but surely. The aliens, who had once been confident of their inevitable victory, now found themselves at the mercy of an unforeseen enemy, the very species they had once underestimated. The key turning point came when a group of resistance fighters, led by General Marcellus Dubois, captured an alien communications relay deep within the heart of Africa. This facility was responsible for coordinating the alien forces' movements on Earth. For months, the aliens had been able to anticipate every human strike, stay one step ahead of the resistance, and reinforce weak points with fresh forces. But with the capture of the relay, humanity now had a critical advantage: the ability to intercept and disrupt alien communications in real time. The operation to capture the relay had been one of the most dangerous and daring missions yet. The relay station was heavily guarded, surrounded by an alien security force that had grown more and more aggressive with each failed attempt by humans to infiltrate their strongholds. But with their knowledge of alien technology and the guerrilla tactics they had honed over the past few months, the resistance managed to breach the perimeter. What followed was a carefully orchestrated battle. Using alien technology they had previously scavenged from fallen drone scouts, the resistance fighters jammed the aliens' communication frequencies, disabling their surveillance drones and leaving the alien forces blind to their movements. The human fighters, once outgunned and outmatched, now had a fighting chance. Their attacks were precise, swift, and devastating. The alien security teams, without the ability to communicate, were thrown into disarray. And in the chaos, the resistance made their move. The capture of the communications relay was a game-changer. It not only disrupted the aliens' ability to coordinate attacks, but also provided vital intelligence to the human forces. For the first time, the humans could strike with full knowledge of the enemy's plans, movements, and weaknesses. The war had entered a new phase. It was no longer a fight for survival, it was a fight to reclaim Earth, and the humans were starting to win. As Dubois and his forces prepared for the next phase of their offensive, they realized that the key to defeating the aliens was not just their ability to fight but their ability to unite. The captured relay had given them more than just strategic intelligence, it had opened a window into the alien command structure. Through intercepted transmissions, they discovered that the alien invaders had their own divisions, their own leaders, and a fragile system of command that could be fractured. The alien forces were not a monolithic machine, they were a complex web of factions, each with its own goals and strategies. Some of the commanders were more concerned with the extraction of resources from Earth, while others were fixated on the extermination of humanity. This division within the alien ranks presented an opportunity. Humanity could not afford to fight the aliens all at once, but if they could exploit these fractures, they could weaken the invaders from within. General Dubois, Clara Thompson, and Marcus Reynolds, leaders who had come to symbolize the human resistance, held a series of strategy meetings in the newly established Resistance Command Center, located in the vast underground bunkers beneath Paris. They knew that to truly turn the tide of the war, they would need to exploit the alien factions' divisions, using misinformation, sabotage, and carefully calculated strikes to create dissension within the invaders' ranks. The first step was a series of covert operations targeting alien supply lines. Using the intelligence gathered from the captured relay, the resistance launched precision raids on alien convoys transporting weapons and supplies to their forward bases. The alien response was swift, but the damage was done. The disruption of their logistics network slowed the advance of the alien war effort and forced them to divert precious resources to protect their supply routes. Simultaneously, Marcus Reynolds and his team launched a series of cyber attacks on the alien command's internal communication systems. By hijacking the aliens' encrypted communication channels, they sent false orders to the alien leaders, causing confusion and mistrust among their ranks. The aliens, who once saw themselves as a unified, invincible force, began to fracture. Officers began to question the motives of their superiors. Some began to suspect sabotage, others feared an impending rebellion from within their own ranks. The very structure that had once given the aliens their strength was beginning to crumble under the pressure of human ingenuity. The most significant blow came when the resistance targeted the alien flagship, a colossal ship that had served as the command center for the entire invasion force. The flagship, which had hovered above Earth for months, was a symbol of the aliens' might. It was nearly indestructible, heavily armored, and bristling with advanced weaponry. But the humans, now fully utilizing their knowledge of alien technology, had a plan. Clara Thompson and her team of engineers developed a weapon designed specifically for this purpose, a device capable of disabling the flagship's energy shields, allowing them to strike at its vulnerable core. The plan was dangerous, and there was no guarantee it would succeed. But the alternative, waiting for the aliens to crush humanity, was unacceptable. Under the cover of darkness, a small team of resistance fighters, led by Du Bois himself, infiltrated the flagship's defenses. Using cloaking devices and advanced alien jamming technology, they snuck aboard the ship undetected. They placed the disabling device at the heart of the flagship's power core, initiating the countdown that would ultimately cripple the ship. The moment the device was activated, a wave of energy surged through the ship, destabilizing its shields and sending shockwaves throughout the alien vessel. The flagship, which had once been an unassailable fortress, was now vulnerable. The resistance fighters made their escape as the flagship systems began to collapse. Within hours, an entire fleet of alien ships, left without their command structure and direction, began to retreat from Earth's atmosphere. The victory was monumental. The destruction of the flagship sent a clear message to the alien invaders: humanity would not be subdued. The tide of war had finally turned. The resistance, fueled by the will to survive and the unity of purpose, had dealt a devastating blow to the alien invaders, and now they were on the offensive. But the war was far from over. While the flagship's destruction was a major victory, the aliens were not defeated. They still controlled vast swathes of Earth, and many of their forces remained loyal to their commanders. However, the humans had proven something crucial: they were capable of overcoming even the most overwhelming odds. The alien invaders now faced an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered, a united, determined humanity, willing to fight for their world. The destruction of the alien flagship was a major turning point, but the war was far from over. As the resistance celebrated their victory, they knew that the aliens would not give up so easily. The invaders had retreated to regroup, but they were still a formidable force, and humanity's newfound strength came with its own risks. With each victory, the alien commanders grew more desperate, realizing that Earth, once thought to be an easy conquest, had become a battleground unlike any they had ever faced. Despite their arrogance and initial overconfidence, the aliens began to adapt to humanity's tactics. They tightened their security, reduced the frequency of their mistakes, and recalibrated their strategies. Their warships were reinforced with new shielding technology, their ground forces became more coordinated, and their weaponry more advanced. The resistance, however, had learned how to strike at their weaknesses. With each alien counterattack, humanity had grown stronger, more resilient, and more determined to reclaim their home. Marcellus Du Bois and his coalition of resistance forces had already begun to shift their focus. The goal was no longer simply to fight back, but to push the aliens off Earth entirely. The resistance's new strategy was to retake key cities, cripple the remaining alien infrastructure, and force the invaders into a corner. The first phase of this plan involved liberating the heavily fortified city of New York, a key strategic location and the nerve center of alien operations in the Western Hemisphere. The city had been a symbol of human resistance, but it had also been one of the hardest hit. For months, New York had been under alien occupation, its streets filled with alien technology and weaponry. The humans who had survived the initial bombardment had formed small pockets of resistance within the city, but they had been too scattered to mount a full-scale counteroffensive. Now, with the alien flagship destroyed and their forces on the defensive, Du Bois saw an opportunity to take back the city. The operation was carefully planned. Du Bois and his team of commanders understood that any misstep could result in catastrophic losses. But they also knew that this was the moment to strike. If they could liberate New York, it would send a powerful message to the rest of the world: Earth was no longer willing to bow to the alien invaders. The world's cities, once teeming with alien forces, would fall one by one. The battle for New York began in the early hours of the morning. Du Bois' forces, along with a coalition of local resistance groups, launched a series of coordinated attacks on key alien strongholds. The resistance fighters, armed with a combination of scavenged alien weaponry and makeshift human technology, used the city's terrain to their advantage. The narrow streets, tall skyscrapers, and underground tunnels all became vital components of the resistance's strategy. The human forces were now experts in urban warfare, using guerrilla tactics to strike at the heart of the alien occupation. The aliens, caught off guard by the ferocity of the human assault, struggled to maintain their hold on the city. The resistance's use of alien technology, including the now-repaired drones, played a crucial role in their success. The drones provided real-time reconnaissance, identifying alien positions and guiding human fighters to their targets. The element of surprise worked in their favor, and within hours, key alien positions were breached. Despite their technological advantage, the aliens were unprepared for the sheer determination of the human forces. The humans had nothing to lose. They fought with a fierce urgency that the invaders could not understand. For the aliens, this was another battle in a long war, but for humanity, it was a fight for survival, for freedom, and for the future of Earth. The most intense fighting took place near the heart of New York, where the aliens had established their main command center. The resistance fighters, knowing that the success of the entire operation rested on this one objective, pushed forward with everything they had. The alien defenses were strong, but the human forces had an advantage that the aliens could not counter: unity. The different factions of the resistance had come together, setting aside differences and working toward a common goal. This solidarity, forged in the crucible of war, gave them an edge that the alien invaders could not match. As the fighting intensified, the resistance launched their final assault on the alien command center. The last remaining alien leaders within the city made one final attempt to repel the human forces, deploying their most advanced weapons. But the humans had anticipated this. Using stolen alien technology, they had developed a countermeasure that disrupted the aliens' energy shields, rendering their most powerful weapons useless. The human fighters, armed with a mix of conventional and alien weapons, pushed through the alien defenses, finally reaching the command center. In a climactic showdown, General Du Bois and his team stormed the heart of the alien stronghold. The battle was fierce, with heavy casualties on both sides. But in the end, the resistance emerged victorious. The alien leadership in New York was eliminated, and the city was liberated. It was a symbolic victory, one that would resonate around the world. News of New York's liberation spread like wildfire. The other cities under alien occupation, Los Angeles, Tokyo, and Paris, were emboldened by the success of the resistance. The momentum had shifted in humanity's favor, and the alien forces, now reeling from the loss of their command center and their flagship, began to retreat in disarray. The global resistance quickly seized this opportunity, launching coordinated attacks to reclaim occupied cities and strike at alien supply lines. The war was far from over, but humanity was no longer fighting to survive, it was fighting to win. Meanwhile, the alien commanders, who had once believed Earth to be their prize, now found themselves facing an enemy they could not defeat. Their supply chains were broken, their leadership in disarray, and their forces scattered. What had started as an invasion of overwhelming force was now devolving into a desperate struggle to hold on to what remained. The human resistance, having learned from their mistakes and exploited the alien invaders' weaknesses, had become a formidable adversary. The war for Earth was entering its final stages. The alien forces, once confident of their inevitable victory, now faced the very real possibility of defeat. Their arrogance had cost them dearly, and the tide of war had turned decisively in humanity's favor. The last stand of the alien invaders would be fought not on Earth's battlefields, but in the minds of their commanders, who now had to grapple with the undeniable truth: the human race had not only survived, it had become the force that would drive them from Earth. The battle for New York marked the tipping point in the war against the alien invaders, but it was only one of many steps in humanity's relentless march toward reclaiming their planet. As the days passed, the momentum continued to shift. The liberation of New York became a symbol of hope and defiance, a rallying cry for the rest of the world. In every corner of the globe, from the crumbling streets of Paris to the once occupied lands of Australia, the resistance swelled in numbers, striking back at the alien invaders with increasing precision and ferocity. But the final stages of the war would be anything but easy. Despite their failures, the aliens were far from broken. They still controlled large parts of the Earth's surface, including several key military strongholds, and their technology was still formidable. However, they were beginning to feel the weight of their overconfidence. The realization that they were no longer invincible gnawed at their leadership, eroding the unity that had once propelled their invasion. In the wake of New York's liberation, General Du Bois and his top commanders gathered in the newly established Resistance Command Center, located in the heart of what had once been an abandoned military bunker in the French countryside. Here, they strategized the final push, the series of operations that would obliterate the remaining alien command structures and force the invaders to retreat from Earth entirely. Their plan, while audacious, was simple. They would strike at the heart of the alien invasion fleet, taking out the remaining command vessels and crippling their ability to regroup. The first step of this plan involved infiltrating the aliens' main military hub, located in the Amazon rainforest, where the invaders had established a hidden fortress. The aliens had built their strongest defenses in this remote location, hiding their final weapons and warships in deep underground bunkers, shielded from human reconnaissance efforts. The rainforest itself, dense and unpredictable, had served as the perfect camouflage. The resistance, however, had grown skilled in moving through enemy territory undetected. Clara Thompson, the Resistance's chief engineer and tactician, worked closely with the specialized forces who had been trained for covert operations. Her team had developed a powerful new device capable of disabling the aliens' most advanced energy shields. The Resistance's previous successes had given them the expertise to reverse engineer alien technology at a faster rate, and now they were ready to face the aliens' strongest defenses head-on. Du Bois' forces, now operating with a level of precision that shocked even the aliens, began their advance on the Amazon base. They traveled on foot, using advanced cloaking technology and the dense terrain of the rainforest to remain hidden. In the early hours of their assault, they planted the disabling devices on the outermost layers of the alien defense system, rendering their The aliens, unsuspecting of the imminent attack, did not detect the human infiltrators until it was too late. Once the initial breach was made, the resistance fighters moved quickly. With a well-timed assault, they disabled several alien warships on the ground and set explosives in key bunkers that housed the invaders' elite forces. The explosion rocked the Amazon base, sending shockwaves through the alien ranks. The resistance pressed forward, striking the alien forces at their weakest moment, when their communication systems were crippled, and their commanders were confused by the sudden onslaught. The Amazon operation was a success, but the cost was high. Many lives were lost in the heat of battle, and the resistance fighters knew that each victory carried a heavy price. However, the destruction of the aliens' final stronghold in the Amazon dealt a decisive blow to the invaders' ability to regroup and launch counterattacks. With their resources diminished and their key military installations decimated, the aliens were now on the defensive. As the war reached its climax, the leaders of the alien invasion fleet convened in a last-ditch effort to regroup. They knew their hold on Earth was slipping, but they still had one remaining weapon, an ancient alien artifact, rumored to be capable of devastating entire cities with a single strike. The artifact had been kept in reserve, hidden deep within the alien command vessel, located in the heart of the Pacific Ocean. It was their ultimate weapon, designed to ensure their dominance over Earth if all else failed. The Resistance, having intercepted alien communications, knew about the artifact and its potential to turn the tide of the war once again. With this knowledge in hand, Du Bois, Clara, and Marcus Reynolds began to formulate a plan to destroy the artifact before the aliens could use it. The final battle would take place in the waters of the Pacific Ocean, where humanity would face its last challenge before Earth could be fully liberated. The operation to destroy the alien artifact was fraught with danger. The Pacific Ocean, already a battlefield for skirmishes between human and alien forces, was about to become the site of humanity's last stand. The alien flagship, now a shell of its former self, hovered in orbit, keeping a watchful eye on the final human assault. However, the resistance had learned to fight smarter, not harder. They knew that overwhelming the alien forces was no longer a viable strategy. Instead, they would focus on precision and timing. Using a fleet of specialized underwater drones and cloaked ships, the resistance fighters infiltrated the alien command vessel undetected. They moved quickly and silently, with one goal in mind: to destroy the artifact before it could be used. The alien vessel, guarded by the last of the invaders' forces, was heavily shielded, and breaking through its defenses would require every ounce of human ingenuity and determination. But the resistance was prepared. Clara Thompson's team had devised a final weapon, a device capable of destabilizing the alien artifact's energy source. Once activated, it would trigger a chain reaction, rendering the artifact useless and preventing the aliens from using it to wipe out entire cities. The device was placed inside the heart of the alien command vessel, and the countdown began. The final moments of the battle were filled with chaos. Alien forces fought tooth and nail to defend the command vessel, but the Resistance's tactical brilliance shone through. With the countdown nearing its end, the human fighters fought back with everything they had, holding off the alien soldiers just long enough to ensure the device was fully activated. In the final seconds, the device detonated, sending a shockwave of energy that disabled the alien artifact and ruptured the alien command vessel's core. The explosion sent the alien flagship spiraling out of control, and the alien fleet began to scatter, their final hope extinguished. The war was over. As the dust settled and the remnants of the alien forces retreated into the stars, humanity stood victorious. Earth had been reclaimed. The war was over, and the invaders who had once thought Earth would be an easy conquest were now defeated, driven from the planet by the very species they had underestimated. But the victory came at a cost. The Earth was scarred, cities were destroyed, and countless lives had been lost. Yet, despite the sacrifices, humanity had proven something profound to the universe: that they would never bow to invaders. The resilience, unity, and unbreakable will of the human race had won the day. The alien vessel, guarded by the last of the invaders' forces, was heavily shielded, and breaking through its defenses would require every ounce of human ingenuity and determination. But the resistance was prepared. Clara Thompson's team had devised a final weapon, a device capable of destabilizing the alien artifact's energy source. Once activated, it would trigger a chain reaction, rendering the artifact useless and preventing the aliens from using it to wipe out entire cities. The device was placed inside the heart of the alien command vessel, and the countdown began. The final moments of the battle were filled with chaos. Alien forces fought tooth and nail to defend the command vessel, but the Resistance's tactical brilliance shone through. With the countdown nearing its end, the human fighters fought back with everything they had, holding off the alien soldiers just long enough to ensure the device was fully activated. In the final seconds, the device detonated, sending a shockwave of energy that disabled the alien artifact and ruptured the alien command vessel's core. The explosion sent the alien flagship spiraling out of control, and the alien fleet began to scatter, their final hope extinguished. The war was over. As the dust settled and the remnants of the alien forces retreated into the stars, humanity stood victorious. Earth had been reclaimed. The war was over, and the invaders who had once thought Earth would be an easy conquest were now defeated, driven from the planet by the very species they had underestimated. But the victory came at a cost. The Earth was scarred, cities were destroyed, and countless lives had been lost. Yet, despite the sacrifices, humanity had proven something profound to the universe: that they would never bow to invaders. The war was over. The alien invaders had been defeated, and Earth had been reclaimed by its rightful inhabitants. It was a moment of triumph, but also one of reflection. The human race had stood on the precipice of extinction and had fought back with an indomitable will. It was a victory that would be etched into the history books for millennia, but the price of that victory was high. The world had been ravaged, cities lay in ruins, and billions of lives had been lost. There was no going back to the way things had been before the invasion. As the last remnants of the alien fleet retreated into the unknown, humanity found itself at a crossroads. The war had left scars, physical, emotional, and psychological, that would take generations to heal. Yet, in the aftermath of such devastation, there was a sense of renewal. The Earth had been saved, but it was now up to its people to rebuild it, to restore what had been lost and make it stronger than before. The challenge of the future would not be just about survival, but about ensuring that the mistakes of the past were never repeated. General Marcellus Du Bois, the leader of the resistance, stood before a global summit of world leaders in what had once been the United Nations building in New York City. The building, battered and scarred by the war, still stood as a symbol of humanity's resilience. The world's nations had come together in the aftermath of the war to discuss the path forward. It was a time for unity, for healing, and for forging a new future, one that would never again allow alien invaders to threaten Earth. Today, Du Bois began, his voice steady yet filled with emotion, we stand at the dawn of a new age. An age where we will never again be seen as weak, as prey, as anything other than what we truly are, a force to be reckoned with. The enemy we fought was not just alien, it was an invader, a conqueror who sought to subjugate us. But we showed them that humanity does not bow. We do not surrender. We do not yield. The room was filled with applause as world leaders rose to their feet, recognizing the extraordinary efforts of the resistance and their commander. But Du Bois knew that the fight was far from over. While Earth was free from alien occupation, the scars of the war would not fade easily. It would take time, patience, and cooperation to rebuild the cities, the economies, and the lives that had been shattered. Humanity had won, but it was now time to heal and rebuild. As the summit continued, Clara Thompson, the brilliant engineer who had designed the final weapon to destroy the alien artifact, stood alongside the other members of the resistance leadership. She was proud of the victory, but like everyone else, she understood the work that lay ahead. Technology had played a crucial role in their success, and it would be the same technology that would guide humanity's recovery. We have the tools to rebuild, Clara said during a side conversation with a group of engineers and scientists. We have the knowledge now. But we must use it wisely. Our victory was not just over the aliens, it was over our own limitations. We cannot afford to let the mistakes of the past repeat themselves. We need to focus on sustainable technologies, on infrastructure that can withstand future threats, on making sure that Earth's future is more resilient than ever before. Across the globe, nations began to make their own plans for recovery. In Europe, the European Union, though greatly weakened by the war, began to unite its remaining resources to aid in the reconstruction effort. Cities like Paris, London, and Berlin, which had been heavily bombed, slowly started to rise from the ashes. Across the oceans in Asia, Japan and South Korea teamed up with China to restore their technological hubs, using a combination of human ingenuity and salvaged alien technology. The pace of rebuilding was slow, but the determination of the human race ensured that progress was made. The world had been broken, but humanity was not broken. The people who had survived the war were determined to build a future worthy of their sacrifices. The war had forged bonds between nations that had never existed before. Former enemies now stood side by side, working toward a common goal. In this new world, there was no room for division. The human race had learned, through blood and fire, that the survival of Earth depended on cooperation, unity, and strength. But as Earth began to heal, humanity could not afford to forget the lessons learned during the war. The alien invasion had been a wake-up call, a reminder of the fragility of civilization. Earth was no longer the isolated, peaceful planet it once was, it had become a beacon of hope and strength, but also a target. The invaders had underestimated humanity's will, but future threats might not be so easily repelled. With this in mind, humanity turned its eyes toward the stars. No longer content with being passive inhabitants of the Earth, the human race began to develop a space program with one goal in mind, to protect Earth from future alien threats. Using the alien technology they had salvaged from the invasion, scientists and engineers worked together to create a new era of space exploration. The first human colonies were built on the Moon and Mars, and soon, humanity's presence in space began to expand. They built a fleet of ships capable of defending Earth and exploring the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Humanity, once an isolated species, was now a player on the intergalactic stage. However, the rebuilding process was not without its challenges. The alien technology, while immensely powerful, was not always easy to understand or control. Many of the alien artifacts were unstable, and there were fears that some might have been left behind intentionally as traps or weapons.